Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to focus on activity two, which is explore the sky. This activity is in your Georgia O'Keeffe Modern Art Explorer Kit. And today we are really going to focus on the sky, using new perspectives, and getting inspired with some new Georgia O'Keeffe work that will actually help us when we create our own skies. So I wanted just to start first and talk to you about the materials you're going to need for this activity. Everything here is you can find within your kit, except for our binoculars. We're going to be making our own binoculars, our own viewfinders today. And we're just going to be using materials that we can find very easily in the house. I'll talk to you about that later. But you will have this postcard, so pull that out so that you can look at the work. You also were going to need your watercolor here, your watercolor crayons, your flat brush here, and your round brush, and then also some watercolor paper. There are a few things that you'll need that aren't in your kit, and that is always a tub of water because this is going to help us activate the colors. So grab something with water in it. And then also I really like to recommend using masking tape, and this way we can create a frame around the paper. So if you have it, great. If not, not a big deal. It's just a nice to have. And then finally, the surface. So we want to make sure that we're in the right environment for painting. So work with your adult, make sure you're in a good space. A counter can be good. The counter I'm on right now is actually really nice to work on because it's all washable. If you don't have a counter or a surface that you can easily paint on, you can grab some bakeware in the kitchen. This is just a glass bakeware pan, and we can use this very easily to put our artwork in and make sure everything stays nice and clean. So make sure you have a good surface, grab some water, get that masking tape, and we are ready to go. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move all of these materials off to the side, and we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about Georgia's artwork, and then we're going to put on a curious mindset. We're going to start to ask some questions and explore this before we make our own sky. So first, I want you just to take a look at how Georgia explored the sky using a unique perspective and her use of color. So when I say a unique perspective, that might be a new word. It's a big word. And really all it is how did she see the things around her? And how do you see the things around you? We all have a unique perspective. We all see things a little bit different. And so it's really important to be aware of that and really take time to observe. So, knowing that Georgia went out, she observed the sky, she created her own perspective of what she saw, and then she reimagined it with some colors, lines, and shapes like you're seeing here in Sunrise and Little Clouds number 2. This is actually a piece of art that you can find at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and this is a watercolor on paper. So take a look here, and I'll give you just a second to take a look before we start diving into the questions. Now, when we start to think about the questions that we're going to talk about to be curious, I first like to ask everyone, what's going on in this artwork? How did she use lines? How did she use color? And then I think, what about is different about this painting that stands out to you? And what does this painting make you think about? So take a moment, answer those questions. And now we're going to start the art activity. So I'm going to facilitate this for you today. You and I are going to work on this together. So I'm going to set this over here. I'm going to keep this postcard safe because I want to think about the colors and seeing how she used lines and different watercolor techniques. I'm going to just set that above here. You're not going to be able to see it any longer. But we are going to start to talk about how we're going to create this unique perspective. So first, before we go and explore this our own sky, we want to create a new view of the sky. So every day we look at things, but how can we change that perspective? How can we make it unique? So I'm pulling out some materials here. First of all, this is just an egg carton. And what I ended up doing here is I just cut the side of the egg carton. You can see here, these were where the eggs were. And then I made a little pair of binoculars by taking my finger and just punching this out. So this is something you might need an adult to help you with. You can also use child safe scissors, but definitely want to make sure you have an adult with you whenever you're using scissors. But yeah, we're just going to take this and use this to look through. Another way that you can make your own viewfinder out of materials that you already have at home is just paper. So this is just construction paper. It can be any type of paper. But what I ended up doing is, let me unfold this and I'll show you, is I ended up taking this paper, pretend that this wasn't already cut out. I folded it once like a hot dog, and then I folded it like a hamburger. And then I cut out a little corner here where all the corners met. And I was able to make my own personal viewfinder. So this is an example of a really clean cut one. This is an example of one that I just ripped the corner out and I got this really nice organic shape. And so these viewfinders are going to be really helpful when we go out and look at our own sky. And just going back to this real quick, let's just pretend that this is our sky for a bit. Let's take a look through these. Look at how different this image starts to get when I look through this new view. So colors really stand out, maybe shapes start to really stand out. Maybe there's, look at how focus on that color I am. Looking at these viewfinders, same thing. When you take your viewfinder, especially when you go look at your own sky, you're going to kind of look through it, think, you're going to scroll around the sky, you're going to observe everything that you can using this new perspective. So with that, I'm going to give you some time. You are going to need to grab your materials, grab an egg carton, make your viewfinder. Go ahead and pause the video so that you can do that. And then when you're ready, come back, because I'm just going to keep moving forward as if you've already made this viewfinder. So now that you're back and you've made the viewfinder, we need to go and explore our own sky. And the easiest way to do this is to look out a window and observe the sky around you, and you can use your viewfinder. Now, if you have an adult or a parent that can go with you, it might be really nice to go on a nature walk and use these with your adult and parent, and use these as you go out and explore the world around you, especially the sky. So you have to definitely have an adult with you if you go outside, but if you don't have an adult available and this is something you really just want to do on your own, go look through a window at your home, use your viewfinder, scan the sky, and while you're doing that, I want you to actually ask some questions. So I'm going to actually show these here. And as you're going through and you're scanning with your binoculars, you're going to start to think, what looks different when you use these? And maybe you'll put them on, and then you take them off, and then put them on, take them off. Think about what looks different there. And then what colors are you seeing as you look through this viewfinder? When we were doing this with Georgia's work, it was really fun because the colors really started to stand out. Here, I'll just kind of move this here, but you really start to focus on these layers of color. And that looks very different than when you look at the entire piece without the viewfinder. So, and then I want you to pay attention. So we're going to be really, really good observers, and we're going to look at clouds and textures in the sky. Are the clouds moving? Are they not? Are there any clouds in the sky? And then what shapes and patterns do you start to see? As you're starting to learn these shapes, you might be seeing clouds and circles, or maybe you're seeing lines. There could be all kinds of fun shapes in the sky. So stand out there, see what stands out to you. And then I want you to look at the light. How is the light shining through the clouds, the sky? What color is it making it? Is it really sunny out? Is it not sunny out? Just pay attention to the light and see how that changes the sky around you. So you have some great questions to ask. You have a viewfinder. You're going to go out and do that. And again, this is a great time to pause this activity. Make sure you go observe your sky, and then I'm going to keep going as if you already did that. So you pause your video, come back, and then we will start to get the activity ready. So moving on, we've come back, we have looked at the sky. We can keep our viewfinder very close to us at all times while we're making, just in case we want to look at the sky again. And now we're going to paint what we saw. And this is where your art is going to look very different than Georgia O'Keeffe's. Now, Georgia O'Keeffe is looking out. This takes place in New Mexico. There are some very specific colors to a desert sky that you can see here. I want you to really think about the colors you saw and to just use this work as an inspiration. So that just means that, hey, maybe this is how I could try and do some clouds, or oh, maybe I could explore creating lines of watercolor like this, and maybe reinterpreting it and making it my own sky. So this is just our inspiration point. So at this point, I'm going to take this and I'm going to keep it up here so that it's close and I can keep it in mind. But now we are going to get to the fun part, and we are going to start to paint. So I am going to get the paper ready. In your art kit, your paper is much bigger than this. You have a very large sheet of paper. What you're going to do is just fold it in half, and we're going to just work at a smaller scale. I like to start small first. I like to get to know my materials. I like to get to know different techniques I can go before I go large. And so starting small is always a nice place to start. And then as you feel more comfortable, you can go large. Now, if you're a big risk taker and you want to go large, by all means, go large. This is just the scale that I'm wanting to work with today. So first, we're going to frame it with your masking tape. And again, if you don't have masking tape, it is okay. We can not secure it. We can find a tray, or you can paint with it in your pad. You don't even have to take it out. You could just paint with it in there. You just want to make sure that you have paper towels between the pages so that the watercolor doesn't bleed to the other pages as well. But yeah, you'll want to definitely find some different ways to secure this if you don't have masking tape. And if you don't have masking tape, just ask an adult in some ways if they can help you. But we're going to pretend you do have masking tape. And like what I'm doing right now is I'm ripping this masking tape. It's easy to cut with your hands. If you need help with an adult, no big deal, but you can do this. You just rip the tape and then you put the tape halfway on, and it might not be this clean and this clean, but that's okay. It can be messy. We're just trying to get all the edges, and we're just trying to secure this artwork for us to work on. So right now we have all of our edges done. If you were on a paintable surface, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. But for this demo and all my demos, I like to show what it looks like if you're doing it in a bakeware pan, just so, or a tray, just something to protect that surface. So I'm going to go ahead and punch this down really quick, like kind of push this down, smash it really good, get it secure in here. The tape's already on there, so just kind of push that tape through, and now we have a working area. So we are going to I am first going to show you some different ways to think about how to use these materials. So really, if you want to just create, just start painting and exploring, that's fine too. These are just going to give you some different ideas on how to experiment, because when we are doing art activities, it's really important that we think about how we are going to experiment, learn new techniques with new materials, explore new materials, etc. So right now what I'm doing is I'm getting my flat brush ready. I'll show you here, getting the water started. And I am actually going to paint water first on my sky. So the sky I looked at was actually very light blue. There was just a few clouds in the sky, and then it was really just all one color of different blues. So it's really bright out today. So what I'm doing here is I am just getting this wet with water, and I'm only going to do it halfway. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to do it at the start. And I'm going to first start and use my watercolor crayons. So these are really magic crayons because you can draw with them, you can create lines, you can do all kinds of things. But when you get them wet, I'm going to show you, they act a little bit different. So you can start to see here, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing this down more flat. I'm not using it like, I'm not writing like this. I am pushing this down more flat. Now, if that is a little hard, what you can do too, this is fine, is you can actually just peel some of this off or you could take off the whole wrapper. It's up to you, but you can just take it and you can kind of do this here. And this is going to give you a nice saturated color. So these are just a little different than the crayons, and let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm just painting this here. Now this was wet, but look at when I add even more water to these crayons. So this is me just getting some water on. Look, it starts to blend, starts to act more like a watercolor. And so when I'm doing this, I think it's important to look at and observe what happens when I add water. What happens when the paintbrush is dry? Like this is more dry. What happens when the brush is really, really wet? And so here you start to see some different ways to do this. So again, I was talking about I had a really big blue sky. I'm going to pull out my watercolors now. I'm going to show you just a few ways to use these. I'm going to focus on blues and whites, and before I really pick the colors, I'm dipping my brush into the water and I'm just putting a little bit of water on here to activate these. So this just kind of gets these started to paint with. So you'll see here, and oops, look, it looks a little blue. And I think that's because my water is blue, and that's okay. Just keep grabbing some water and grab just a little bit less, and you can kind of just brush that color off so that you can get to the color that you're after. If it was really bad, if it was like a black and a yellow, you can grab a paper towel and just dab it, wet it, dab it, and then that color that's on top of the paint will come off. But paints are meant to be messy. I mean, look at mine. Like sometimes you just maybe want to just grab all of them, and that's okay too. But right now I'm just showing you a few ways to activate these colors. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab this light blue, and I have activated the color. I'm going to grab more water on my brush. I'm going to kind of set it in there, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle it. So you can kind of apply some pressure, you're going to wiggle it, and then you can start to see that color on the tip. And that shows me that I'm ready to start painting. So here I'm taking this light blue. I'm going to take that out of the camera now, and I'll just show you how I'm painting this really, really light blue. And again, this was dry. So it's interesting doing the watercolor on a dry piece of paper. I actually think I am going to paint this as well, just so I can get the blending that I really want to happen. I kind of want these dark and light blues to come together, and I want to just really saturate this page with color. So now I'm starting to pull in some of that color below and just really have fun here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now, looking at Georgia's, I know everyone's skies will be different, but I just want to show you a few things here. So with some of these colors and seeing how these come together, there's a few ways you can do that using your crayons or your watercolor. First, I'm just going to, for the sake of the demo, show you how to maybe make some of these colors come together a bit more. So with this yellow, I'm going to start there. Same thing, I'm activating the yellow. I'm getting some water on it. My water is a little blue, and that's okay. I'm going to just keep painting it till I get the paint, and then I'm going to take it down and really kind of dab and push my brush into there. And then I'm going to pull it on here. So I think it's important to look at, like, I'm now using the round brush. Before I was using primarily the flat brush. Look at what starts to happen here as I do a line. And there's so much water already on there that it actually starts to pull down and blend and do some really interesting color mixing. So that is the watercolor yellow. Now we also have this watercolor crayon, and I'm going to dip it in my water just like I would a paintbrush here. And I'm going to use it like a paintbrush. So I'm going to just kind of push it down and maybe draw a line. Maybe this is a really, and I can tell that this area is not as wet, but I'm just going to draw a line. And then for the sake of just showing you on how you can blend some of these colors, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to see what happens when I start to really add more water to this. So right here, I'm going to go through and add some of that. You know, I've really wanted that red to come out a bit differently, so I think I'm going to kind of move it on its side. And I want to add some more water here. And this time I'm going to use my round brush and I'm going to dab and change up my brush strokes and see if that helps. But here we go. And again, this is all experimenting. And so as I kind of see this, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could add some more watercolor. And I'm going to actually use my flat brush now. And I'm going to grab some more intense colors here to see if I can get these to blend. So you can see here I'm just kind of dabbing these watercolors right like that and seeing what happens. And what's fun at this point is that you have your watercolors, your watercolor crayons and your watercolors. And so you can really start to see what happens when you do both of them and what happens when you start to add different things. So moving on to some clouds, I'm gonna go back to that white. And again, I'm grabbing my round brush, getting it activated. I kind of just want to make some clouds here. I'm just gonna use a little bit of this white that you have and kind of open this up a little bit. And right here, I'm really cueing some inspiration from how I saw the clouds interpreted here. So I'm gonna just pull this out, add some white. Another thing, if you don't want to add white, is the more water you use, sometimes the more paint will actually leave the surface. And so what I might do is just really saturate this painting here and see what happens. I also want to pull this out one more time, and I want to just see what happens when everything is wet. So for this demo, I have this completely open, it's flat. I'm just going to kind of push things here and there, make some different sky variations. Really want to see if I can get some more yellow here, experiment with like lines. And then I'm thinking clouds. How can I start to show clouds? And maybe, oh, these are really dark, but maybe this is just the contrast of it. This is where you can add lots of marks, and then you can really just paint from there and just explore and see what happens. So I'm going to keep adding some colors here. I'm going to add some different things. But what I can do at this point too is watercolor when it dries is really fun to explore. So when it dries, you can keep adding different layers to it. And you might want to finish it today, and that's great too. But you can also wait and let it dry and then add even more layers to it, which could be really fun. So right now I'm just using all the materials that I have. And I'm thinking about different ways here. I can maybe explore the color. Is there ways that I can make things stand out? Pulling a little bit of the inspiration from this original activity here. Just creating some lines and some different textures. And then I'm going to add some more water. And then at that point, I am going to let it dry. I want to just show you quickly what happens if you let it dry and you come back to it. So I had one that I did a little earlier. This was a sky exploration. And you can see it's dry and there are all these different layers and textures. And I bring this out because this is completely dry. But when I go back to add the colors and the textures, you can see how different the paints will actually act. And so that's some of the interesting experiments you can do with watercolor is you can add all of these lines and textures, and you can start to really add more more layers without, and it actually really changes the painting too when you do this. So just want to keep an open mind here. You can see here I'm starting to pull on some of that inspiration here with the clouds. I'm kind of leaving them open and just adding some new layers. So again, this is your sky. Really, I'm going to let you all take it from here. You have everything you need. You have some ways to use your watercolor crayons. You know that you can add lots of layers to this. You know how to activate your watercolors, and that should be everything you need. And you're keeping your viewfinder close just in case you want to look at the sky one more time. So again, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be creative and play and to have fun with these colors. And I look forward to doing the next activity with you.